I twisted the cap off the survey tube and the metal rang soft against the tailgate. Every eye locked on my hands. The deputy leaned closer. Margaret did not move. Her phone stayed up, but her smile tightened. I slid the rolled map halfway out. Thick paper. Yellowed edges. County seal stamped in dark blue wax. The patrol lights caught it and made it glow. That got their attention. The wind picked up and tugged at the corner of the map. I held it steady. "Sir," the deputy said, slower now, "what is that?" I did not answer right away. I unrolled just enough to show the top corner. Parcel grid. Survey lines. A name printed in clean block letters. Reeves Ranch Land Trust. Someone in the crowd whispered. Margaret stepped closer, heels crunching gravel. "That is irrelevant," she said quickly. Too quickly. "We have updated plats on file. This area was rezoned 2 years ago." Her voice sounded practiced. Rehearsed. Like she had said it in meetings a dozen times. I kept unrolling the map. Inch by inch. The paper made a dry, steady sound. The kind you only hear in old county offices. The deputy's radio crackled on his shoulder, then went quiet again. Even that small noise felt loud. I pointed at a thin line running across the page. "This is the main access road," I said. My finger traced it up the valley. Past the gate. Past the sign. Past every house built along that ridge. "And this," I added, sliding my finger to a marked crossing, "is the bridge your tow truck is sitting on." The driver shifted his weight. He looked down at the boards under his feet like they might answer him. Margaret laughed once. Short. Sharp. "That is old infrastructure," she said. "The association maintains all common areas now." She said the word maintains like it gave her ownership. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small keyring. One brass key. Worn smooth. The same initials stamped into the bow. RRL. I held it up just long enough for the deputy to see. Then I closed my fist around it again. "Maintenance does not transfer control," I said. The deputy glanced from the key to the map. His posture changed. Not a lot. Just enough. His hand moved away from his belt. Margaret saw it too. Her voice sharpened. "Officer, he is trying to confuse the situation. He broke into a restricted property. We filed the paperwork. We enforce the rules here." Enforce. Another word she liked. Another word that sounded bigger than it was. I lowered the map a few inches and let the wind catch the bottom edge. It snapped once. Loud. Clean. The sound echoed off the trees. Heads turned toward the bridge again. The amber lights on the tow truck flickered across the planks. Old wood. Reinforced steel brackets. All of it tied to the same line on this map. "You filed paperwork," I said, keeping my voice even. "But you built your control on top of a single access line you do not own." The deputy took a step back from the truck. Just one step. But it broke the line Margaret had drawn across that road. The crowd shifted again. Phones dipped. Then lifted back up. Margaret took a breath through her nose. Slow. Measured. "We have legal authority over this community," she said. Every resident signed the agreement. Agreement. Not deed. Not title. Agreement. The difference sat there between us like a crack in the ground. I unrolled the map all the way and set it flat on the tailgate. The county seal pressed into the metal with a dull tap. Lines spread out across the page like veins. Cabins. Lots. Roads. The creek. The bridge. All connected. All anchored to one name. Mine. The deputy leaned in and read it. His lips moved slightly. Margaret stopped speaking. For the first time since I stepped out of that cabin, she had nothing ready. The wind died for a second. Complete silence. Then the deputy looked up at her, and his expression was not the same anymore. The deputy straightened up slowly, like something heavy had just settled on his shoulders. His eyes moved from the map to Margaret, then back to the map again. "Ma'am," he said, "careful now, who authorized the closure of this road?" Margaret did not answer right away. Her jaw tightened. The camera in her hand dipped a few inches before she lifted it again. "The association did," she said. "We have full control over community access." Control. She leaned on that word again, like it could hold the ground steady beneath her. The deputy glanced toward the bridge. The tow driver had stepped off it completely now. He stood beside his truck, hands on his hips, staring at the planks like they might shift under weight he could not see. I tapped the map once, right on the bridge marking. "That structure carries the only permitted access route into this valley," I said. "Everything behind it depends on that line staying open." A murmur moved through the crowd. Low. Uneasy. Someone lowered their phone. Another stepped back from the road without realizing it. Margaret forced a laugh. It came out thin. "This is fear tactics," she said. "He is trying to scare residents with outdated documents." Outdated. That word hung there. I reached into the tube again and pulled out a second sheet. Smaller. Cleaner. Newer ink. County verification stamp in red this time. I set it beside the first map. The 2 pages lined up perfectly. Old lines. New confirmation. Same boundaries. The deputy leaned in closer. He read longer this time. His lips moved over the text. His radio crackled again, but he ignored it. Margaret stepped forward fast, heels clicking sharp against the gravel. "You cannot just bring random paperwork and override a registered community," she snapped. "We have filings. We have approvals. Filings. Approvals. Still not deeds. Still not titles." I slid my finger down the second page to a paragraph block near the bottom. "Recorded access control remains with original trust holder unless formally transferred and reissued through county review," I read out loud. The deputy followed along. His eyes paused on the last line. Then he looked up at her. That was the second shift. Subtle. But real. Margaret saw it. Her breath came in shorter now. Not panic. Not yet. But something close. "Officer," she said, sharper, "this man is trespassing. That is the issue. Not land theory. Theory." She was shrinking it now. Trying to make it small again. I folded the corner of the map back just enough to expose the grid behind the bridge. Dozens of marked lots. Each one tied to that same access line. "If I am trespassing," I said quietly, "then every vehicle behind that bridge crossed land you do not control." The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The wind had died completely. Even the trees stood still. The deputy turned and looked down the valley road. Headlights from parked cars stretched in a line behind him. Families. Houses. Lights glowing in windows up the slope. All of it connected to that one strip of land under his boots. The tow driver took another step back. Gravel shifted under his heel. Margaret opened her mouth, then stopped. For the first time, she looked at the road instead of at me. That was when it hit her. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Like a structure starting to lean. She lowered her phone slowly. The red recording light still blinked. The crowd was not laughing anymore. No one said a word. The deputy reached up and adjusted his radio, eyes still on the map. Then he looked at me again, different this time. Careful. Measured. Sir, he said, I am going to need you to explain exactly what this document means for everyone here. The deputy's question hung in the air, and every head turned back to me. I did not rush. I flattened the map with my palm, feeling the cold metal of the tailgate through the paper. It means, I said, steady, that this road, that bridge, and every access point you are using right now still runs through a trust that has not been transferred. The words landed slower this time. Heavier. The deputy glanced down again, tracing the line with his finger like he needed to feel it to believe it. Margaret stepped in fast, her heels clicking sharp again. That is not how modern developments work, she snapped. We filed updated plats. We have community governance. Governance. She kept reaching for bigger words. I shook my head once. Governance does not replace ownership, I said. The wind picked up again, lifting a corner of the map. It fluttered, then settled. A small sound, but everyone heard it. The deputy exhaled slowly. So what happens, he asked, if that control stays with you? There it was. The real question. Not about trespassing. Not about rules. About control. I looked past him, down the valley. Porch lights flickered on in the distance. Cars parked along the slope. Families standing in driveways, watching. All of it connected by that one strip of road now blocked by her decision. If control stays with the trust, I said, then any restriction placed on this access without authorization is not enforceable. A murmur rolled through the crowd again. Louder this time. Uneasy. The tow driver rubbed the back of his neck and took another step away from the bridge. Margaret's voice cut through it. That is a misinterpretation, she said quickly. We regulate entry for safety. That is within our rights. Safety. Another word she leaned on. I tapped the second document. Regulation does not include shutting down the only permitted entry point, I said. Especially not with emergency vehicles already committed to the site. The deputy's head turned slightly at that. He looked at the patrol cars behind him. Then at the blocked road. Then back at the map. That was the third shift. Subtle. But final. Margaret saw it happen. Her shoulders stiffened. Officer, she said, voice tighter now, this is being blown out of proportion. He is creating confusion to avoid removal. Removal. She was still trying to pull it back to that. Keep it small. Keep it simple. I folded the top edge of the map down, revealing a stamped section near the bottom. County verification. Current year. Fresh ink. Not old. Not outdated. This is not confusion, I said quietly. This is recorded. The deputy leaned in again. Closer than before. He read the stamp. His jaw tightened slightly. He straightened up and looked directly at Margaret. Ma'am, he said, slower now, did the association receive formal transfer documentation for this access line? Margaret opened her mouth. Stopped. Closed it again. That pause lasted just a second too long. The crowd felt it. The air shifted. Someone whispered again. This time louder. I could hear the word transfer repeated under their breath. Margaret lifted her phone again, but her hand was not steady anymore. The red recording light blinked against her fingers. We have legal counsel handling all filings, she said finally. Not an answer. Not really. The deputy nodded once, but his eyes did not leave her face. The wind carried the sound of the creek again, louder now, like. The valley itself was listening. I rolled the map halfway back up, slow and deliberate. The paper made that same dry sound. It echoed in the quiet. The deputy watched my hands this time, not like I was a threat, but like I was holding something he needed to understand fully. Margaret took a step back without realizing it. Just one. But it broke her position at the front of the road. The crowd noticed. They always noticed the first step back. I slid the documents into the tube and set it upright against the truck bed. So now what? The deputy asked, almost under his breath. I looked at the blocked bridge, the patrol cars, the HOA carts, and then back at him. Now, I said, we decide who actually has the right to control this valley. The deputy did not answer right away. He looked at the blocked bridge again, then back at Margaret, then at me. You could see it happening in real time. The situation was no longer about removing one person. It had spread wider than that. Margaret stepped forward again, faster this time, like she was trying to take back ground she had already lost. "Officer, this is getting ridiculous," she said. "You are here because this man broke into a restricted area. That has not changed." Her voice was sharper now. Less polished. The edges were showing. I stayed still beside the truck. The cold metal pressed against my leg. "It has changed," the deputy said quietly. That stopped her. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just firm enough. The crowd shifted again. Someone coughed. Someone whispered, "What does that mean?" Margaret forced a breath and lifted her chin. "It means nothing," she said quickly. "He is twisting legal language. We have authority here." Authority. Still that word. The deputy glanced at the HOA carts blocking the road. Then at the patrol cars behind him. Then down the slope where more headlights had appeared. Cars trying to come up. Stuck. Waiting. The line was growing. That was the part she had not thought about. The system outside her control. I pushed off the truck slowly and stepped closer to the map tube. "You shut the only access point," I said. "Without verified control. That affects every property beyond that bridge." The deputy nodded once. Small. Controlled. But it mattered. Margaret shook her head, a little too fast. "We regulate traffic all the time," she said. "For safety, for maintenance, for community events." She was reaching now. Grabbing anything that sounded normal. I pointed toward the bridge. "With notice. With permits. With coordination," I said. "Not like this." The tow driver spoke up for the first time. "Nobody told me about permits," he said. His voice carried more than he expected. It cut through the air. Margaret turned toward him sharply. "You were contracted for service," she snapped. "Stay out of this." He did not move. That was new. The deputy noticed it too. The control she thought she had over everyone in this space was slipping. Piece by piece. I could see it in the small things. The way people stopped nodding when she spoke. The way they looked at the road instead of at her. The way the silence felt heavier after each sentence she said. The deputy stepped toward the bridge now. Slow. Measured. He crouched slightly and looked at the base of the structure. The support beams. The markers. Old county tags still bolted into the metal. He ran his hand across one of them. Dirt came off in a thin line. He stood up again and looked back at me. Different again. Not unsure anymore. Not neutral. Focused. Margaret followed his gaze and saw it. That was when her composure cracked just a little. "This is a private community," she said, louder now. "We decide who comes in and out." I shook my head once. "Not on land you do not control," I said. The wind picked up again, stronger this time. It pushed through the trees and down the road. It carried the sound of engines idling below. More cars. More people waiting. The situation was not holding still anymore. It was building. The deputy reached for his radio, then paused. He looked at Margaret one more time. really looked this time. Not at her coat. Not at her phone. At her. Then he spoke. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the road for a moment." The words landed harder than anything said so far. Margaret froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. The crowd felt it. I felt it. She had just lost the road. And she knew it. Margaret did not move at first. Her heels stayed planted right at the edge of the gravel, like stepping back would admit something she was not ready to admit. The deputy did not raise his voice. He did not repeat himself. He just stood there, waiting. That made it worse. Silence pressed in from all sides. The kind that makes every small movement feel loud. Finally, she took a step back. Just one. Then another. Each step sounded sharper than it should have. The crowd parted slightly behind her. No one told them to. They just did. The deputy nodded once and turned toward the bridge. "I need this cleared," he said, calm but firm. The tow driver did not hesitate this time. He walked straight to his truck, climbed in, and started the engine. The amber light spun faster, reflecting off the wet wood and metal rails. Margaret turned toward him, panic slipping into her voice. "Do not move that vehicle," she snapped. "You are under contract with the association." The driver looked at her through the windshield, then looked at the deputy, and slowly backed the truck off the bridge. The tires rolled over the planks with a low, hollow sound. Each rotation felt like a release. Like pressure lifting off something that had been held too tight. The deputy stepped aside to give him space. He watched the truck clear the bridge completely, then gestured toward the HOA carts. "Move those two," he said. One of the security guards hesitated. He looked at Margaret. Then at the deputy. Then back at Margaret again. That pause said everything. "Move them," the deputy repeated, still calm. The guard climbed into the cart and started it up. The electric motor hummed softly as he pulled it off the road. The second cart followed. The road opened inch by inch. Gravel exposed again. Tire tracks visible. A clear path forming where there had been a blockade just minutes ago. I stood by the truck and watched it happen. No rush. No noise. Just the system resetting itself. Margaret's phone was still in her hand, but she was no longer filming. The screen faced down now. Her grip tightened around it. "This is not over," she said, her voice lower now, controlled but strained. "You cannot just override a community structure because you show up with old paperwork. Old again." She kept going back to that. I picked up the survey tube and tapped it lightly against the tailgate. A small metallic sound. Clean. Sharp. "It is not old," I said. "It is still active." The deputy glanced at me, then back at her. He was tracking the difference now. Not just hearing it. Understanding it. The road behind him was no longer blocked. Headlights from the lower slope began to move forward. Slow at first. Then steady. Cars rolling up one by one. People inside watching everything unfold through their windshields. Margaret turned toward the incoming vehicles, then back at the deputy. "You are making a mistake," she said. "You are letting him manipulate the situation." The deputy shook his head once. "No," he said. "I am correcting it." That word landed heavier than anything before it. Correcting. Not choosing sides. Not arguing. Just fixing what had been set wrong. Margaret opened her mouth again, but no words came out this time. The wind moved through the valley again, stronger now, carrying the sound of tires on gravel, engines idling, doors opening. Life moving again. The system she tried to control without authority was slipping back into its natural order. I stepped away from the truck and walked toward the edge of the road. The first car passed the bridge slowly. The driver nodded at me without saying a word. Behind him, more followed. A line unbroken now. Margaret watched it all, her posture stiff, her shoulders tight. The valley was no longer listening to her. It was moving around her. And she could feel it. The first car rolled past me slow, tires crunching over gravel that had been blocked minutes ago. The driver kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, but his jaw was tight. He had been waiting. They all had. Another car followed. Then another. Headlights stretched down the slope like a line finally breathing again. The deputy stepped to the side of the road and watched them pass, counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. Each one proof that this was never just about one cabin. Margaret stood near the edge of the clearing, her coat pulled tight, phone still in her hand but forgotten now. Her eyes tracked every car like she was losing something with each one that passed. "This does not change the structure," she said, quieter now, but still holding on. "The association still governs this community." Govern. The word sounded thinner now. The deputy glanced at her, then at the moving line of vehicles. "Governance does not include blocking primary access without verified authority," he said. He did not look at me when he said it. He did not need to. The valley itself was answering that question now. I walked a few steps closer to the road, keeping my distance but staying in sight. The air felt different. Less tight. Still cold, but moving. "You built rules on top of access you do not own," I said. "That is where this breaks." A man from one of the cars slowed enough to lower his window. "Is the road open?" he asked the deputy. His voice carried a mix of relief and confusion. The deputy nodded once. "Yes, sir." "Keep moving." The man nodded back and drove on. That exchange rippled through the line. Windows cracked open. Heads leaned out. Questions passed from one car to the next in low voices. The truth was moving faster than any announcement could. Margaret took a step forward again, trying to reinsert herself into the center. "You cannot just dismantle a community framework in the middle of the road," she said, louder now, trying to reach the crowd again. Some people looked at her. Most did not. Their attention stayed on the road, on the movement, on the fact that something had just shifted without her permission. That was the part she could not control. I tapped the survey tube lightly against my palm. The metal rang soft. "Framework depends on foundation," I said. "And your foundation is not what you think it is." The deputy looked at the bridge again, then at the open road stretching beyond it. His posture had changed completely now. No hesitation. No uncertainty. He was no longer reacting. He was assessing. "Ma'am," he said, turning back to her, "I am going to need documentation of your authority over this access line before any further restrictions are placed." Margaret's mouth tightened. She did not have it. Not here. Maybe not at all. "Our legal team handles that," she said again, but the words landed weaker this time. The crowd heard it. The difference was clear now. The valley did not respond to her voice anymore. It responded to movement. To access. To the simple fact that the road was open and people were using it. A pickup truck came through next, slower than the others. The driver tipped his hat toward me as he passed. Small gesture. But it spread. The next driver nodded. Then another. Recognition moving quietly through the line. Margaret saw it. Her shoulders stiffened again. Not anger this time. Something closer to realization. The system she thought she controlled had never been hers. She had been standing on borrowed ground the entire time. The deputy keyed his radio and spoke in a low voice, requesting verification and additional review. His tone was different now. Formal. Controlled. This was moving beyond the roadside. Beyond this moment, I watched the last of the immediate line pass through the bridge. The road stretched clear again. Open. Quiet. But not the same as before. Something had shifted permanently. Margaret stood still, staring at the empty stretch of gravel like it might reverse itself if she waited long enough. It did not. And she was starting to understand why. The road settled into a steady rhythm again. Tires on gravel. Engines humming low. No more hesitation. No more stops. Just movement. The deputy stepped a few feet away from the bridge and spoke into his radio, voice calm but precise. He gave coordinates. He mentioned access control. He mentioned conflicting authority claims. That phrase carried weight. I watched Margaret when he said it. Her eyes flickered. Not panic. Not yet. But she heard it. This was no longer a neighborhood issue. It had crossed into something bigger. She straightened her coat and stepped forward again, slower this time, more careful. You are escalating this unnecessarily, she said, trying to regain her tone. We can resolve this internally. Internally. She wanted to pull it back inside her structure again. Keep it contained. The deputy did not respond immediately. He finished his transmission, clipped the radio back onto his shoulder, and looked at her. It is already outside that, he said. Simple. Direct. The kind of answer that does not leave space to argue. A few residents lingered near the roadside now, no longer hiding behind their cars. They watched openly. Some crossed their arms. Some whispered. The shift was visible. Margaret was no longer the center of control. She was part of the problem they were watching unfold. I walked back to the tailgate and rested my hand on the survey tube. The metal was cold now. Steady. You built a system that assumes control over access, I said. But you never secured the access itself. A man standing near the shoulder nodded slightly. He did not say anything, but he understood. Others did too. That is how it spreads. Quietly. Margaret turned toward them, catching that reaction. Do not listen to this, she said, voice rising again. The association protects your property values. Your safety. Your investment. The words sounded rehearsed. But now they felt hollow. The deputy glanced down the road where the last of the waiting vehicles had cleared. The valley was open again. Fully. Completely. No barriers left. Ma'am, he said, until documentation is verified, no further restrictions are to be placed on this road. Margaret stared at him. That sentence landed heavier than anything before it. It did not argue. It did not debate. It set a line. She took a breath, held it, then released it slowly. Her phone was still in her hand, but she did not raise it again. The recording had stopped without her noticing. I could see the screen had gone dark. The moment she had tried to capture had slipped past her. The wind moved through the valley again, softer now. Carrying the smell of pine and damp earth. Normal sounds returning. Doors closing. Engines fading in the distance. But under that, something else remained. A tension that had not fully released. The deputy stepped back toward his patrol car, but he did not get in. Not yet. He kept his eyes on the road, then on Margaret, then briefly on me. Measuring. Waiting. This was not finished. Not even close. Margaret looked down at the gravel, then back up at the sign near the entrance. Whitmore Valley Estates. The paint was still fresh. Bright. But now it looked different. Smaller somehow. Like it had been placed on something it did not belong to. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from the cold, but from something settling in. A realization she could not push away anymore. The system she built did not fail because of one mistake. It failed because it was never anchored to the right ground. And now everyone here had seen it. The deputy's radio crackled again, louder this time, and he turned his head slightly to listen. The radio crackled again, sharper this time, and the deputy turned his shoulder to catch every word. His posture changed as he listened. Not uncertain anymore. Confirmed. He keyed the mic once, gave a short response, then let his hand fall back to his side. That small motion carried more weight than anything said before. Margaret saw it instantly. What did they say? She asked, stepping forward without thinking. The deputy looked at her, then past her, then back again. County records are verifying the access line, he said. Preliminary match to an active trust. Active. That word landed like a stone. The crowd heard it. A ripple moved through them, quieter than before, but deeper. Not curiosity now. Recognition. Margaret shook her head once, slow, controlled, like she could push it away if she moved carefully enough. That does not override community governance, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. It sounded like something she was repeating, not something she believed. I stepped closer to the road, stopping just short of where the gravel dipped toward the bridge. The valley stretched open behind it. Lights scattered along the slope. Homes built on lines that all fed back to the same narrow strip beneath our feet. It does not override it, I said. It defines its limits. The deputy nodded slightly. He was following now. Not reacting. Understanding. Margaret looked at the sign again. Whitmore Valley Estates. The paint was still bright, but now it felt like it was sitting on top of something it could not cover. She exhaled slowly, then turned back toward the deputy. We have invested millions into this. Development, she said. Infrastructure, maintenance, community standards. That has to count for something. The deputy met her gaze. It does, he said. But it does not change underlying control of access. No hesitation. No softening. Just the line. A man from earlier stepped forward from the shoulder, hands in his jacket pockets. So what happens now? He asked. The question hung between all of us. Real. Immediate. No longer theoretical. I looked down at the bridge, then back at the line of homes climbing the hillside. Now it gets reviewed, I said. Properly. At the county level. The deputy added, until then, the road stays open. No restrictions without verified authority. Another line drawn. Clear. Firm. Margaret closed her eyes for a second. Just a second. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Not acceptance. Not fully. But the fight had changed shape. She was no longer trying to control the moment. She was calculating what came next. That was different. The crowd began to break apart slowly. People returning to their cars. Doors closing. Engines starting. The valley returning to its rhythm, but not the same as before. Conversations carried in low tones. Questions moving from one driveway to the next. The system she built was no longer invisible. Everyone had seen the crack. I picked up the survey tube and slid the documents back inside, careful, deliberate. The metal cap twisted shut with a soft click. Final. The deputy watched the motion, then looked at me. You should stay available, he said. This is going to move fast. I nodded once. I already knew. Margaret stood a few yards away, arms folded tight, eyes fixed on the road like she could still see the line she had drawn there earlier. It was gone now. Completely. Replaced by something she did not control. The wind moved through the trees again, carrying the sound of the creek below and the distant hum of cars settling into their driveways. Normal sounds. But layered with something new. Something unresolved. Margaret turned slightly, just enough to face me without fully committing to it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, quieter than before, "This is not finished." I met her gaze and held it there. The valley stretched behind her, open and quiet, waiting. "No," I said, "it is just starting."